Alright, so before we go on with today's lesson, we are going to go over the homework that was assigned after last lesson. So you had questions number 6 through 9. So the first question, you had to identify each of the functions. I would like you to get in the habit of writing exponential, linear, absolute value. Those are the types of functions we've learned so far. So I want you to get in the habit of noticing the difference between how each of those look. Okay, so remember, exponential is going to have an x in the exponent. A linear function is going to have the x and the y both have a exponent of 1. So remember, if there's nothing in the exponent, that means it is 1. Okay, and then of course absolute value, that has absolute value brackets around it. So for this one, we want to know, when is the function h of x greater than p of x? So I rewrote y1 and y2 because that's how I'm going to put it into my calculator. So what I've shown you here is, if you wanted to do this all algebraically, you could. So you can just type in, so -3, this would be 2 raised to the -3 power, and you'd get 0.125, and then 3 times -3 plus 2. So basically we're just substituting into each of these and getting the answers. So that's what all of this stuff is. But if you didn't want to do that, what you could do instead is you could put this into your calculator, okay, and then you're going to look at the table, okay. So I'll start with -3, which, nice enough, ends up being the answer. But so -3, if you look, so this is positive and this is negative. So since that is true, that means that -3 does satisfy this. So choice 1 is actually your answer. But if you keep going, you can see, what are the other ones? Let's see. So for 0, it's not true. And see, it's going down. So that's not true for either of those either. Okay? All right, question number 7. Okay, so for number 7, you just needed to plot both of those equations and then find your solution. Remember, you could always check in your calculator, how I showed you last time. But if you aren't able to do that, then you could always do it the long way. Okay, so again, this has one solution. All right, question number 8, you just needed to solve for y for the linear function. Put them both in, and for this one, it's kind of important that you look at the graph, because you can see that it actually, so this is going to be, it's really hard to see on the graph, which is why for this one, it's kind of important that you do look in your calculator. So let me just plug those in real quick. So 4 raised to the -x, and then -3x plus 1. So if you look at the graph of that, it's exponential, and then there's a line. Now to the naked eye, it looks like it just hits it once, but that's not true. So if you look at the table, okay, you can actually see right here, it's the same, and so is at 0, 1. All right, so make sure you always look at the graph, always look at the table, because if you do the shortcut intersection with the calculator, it's actually only going to show you the 1 unless you zoom in a little bit. All right, and the last one, number 9, that's an absolute value function with a linear function. So if you put both of those in, you would see that it crosses not only once but twice. So here I've copied down the table, and then again, make sure you always write down your answer as a coordinate. Okay, so today's lesson, we are going to learn what a piecewise function is and how to graph them. This is a little bit of a tricky topic, so I am going to spend 2 lessons on it, 2 days. So again, today is day 4 of Unit 5. We separated this into part 1 and part 2, so we just focused on absolute value. Now we are going to focus kind of on functions as a whole. So a piecewise function can be defined as a combination of equations that represent different parts of its domain. So the key word in here is the domain. That's the big thing we are going to focus on. The other thing I want you to focus on is how you would actually break this up to make it a little bit easier. So to point out what this actually means, I'm going to rewrite this as two separate functions. So we can actually say that this is f of x equal to negative x. And it's also f of x equal to 2/3 x minus 4. So what we're going to do, this is the part that we have to pay attention to, okay? So we'll start with the top one. That one's a little bit easier. Okay, so this is saying that when x is less than 3 or equal to, okay, so 3 or less, we want to know what the function is. So we put this function into our calculator, but the points we're going to make, now it has to be 3 or less. So if we put that into our calculator, whoop, line that up, sorry. Okay, so if we put that into our calculator, negative x, and I'm just going to look at the table, okay? So we want it to be less than 3. So I'm going to actually, I'm just going to start at 0, okay? So 0, 1, 2, 3, so 0, 0, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. So if we have this sign or this sign, we're going to have a closed circle. All right? If we, sorry, I'm losing it. Those are obviously the same exact sign. Okay, so if we have a less than or equal to or a greater than or equal to, we're going to have a closed circle. If we have no equal sign, that means it's going to be an open circle. Okay, and I will say this 40 times in this lesson. Okay, so I'm going to put a little note for ourselves. So this is going to be a closed dot, this coordinate right here. Okay, put y1. Okay, so here's what that will look like. So what we're going to do is we're going to plot those points. Okay, so 0, 0, 1, negative 1, 2, negative 2. And then this, you kind of got to make that look like I want you to exaggerate it a little bit. Oh, sorry, I said that's so weird. Okay, so make that kind of a big circle. Okay. All right, and then what you're going to do is it cannot go less than x. All right. So when you create this line, okay, can't go past this way. It's only going to go up. Okay, so this is how you would draw it. Okay, so when you think of piecewise function, you're putting multiple lines together. So you're piecing them together. Okay, so now let's look at the other one. So f of x is equal to 2/3 x minus 4. Okay, so go ahead and put that into your calculator. All right, so I put that into my calculator. And then I'm going to graph it and look at the table. Okay, so now for this one, I want numbers greater than 3. So I'm going to start when x is equal to 3. And I'm going to take a little bit more. Okay, now remember I told you guys that I only want you to graph perfect numbers, like whole numbers, unless it's something like 1/2. You guys can do 1/2. Okay, so, okay, this is going to be x and y2. So, again, I'm going to start at 3. So, where are we? 3, negative 2. 6 is my next whole number, and then 9, 2. Now for this one, this is greater than 3. So we're going to plot this point, but it's going to be an open dot. Okay? Oh, cool. All right. So let's plot those points. Okay, so now we're going to go to 3, -2. All right, so it's going to be right above it. And what you're going to do is you're going to draw an open dot. Okay, now that looks weird, but and then you're going to do 6, 0, 6, 0, and then 9, 2. Okay, and then you're going to draw your line. Now again, make sure that, so you have that open dot, so it can't go through that point. It's only going to go up. And then lastly, draw your little arrows. Okay? And then we're actually just going to label this at the top f of x, because this is a piecewise function. Okay, so all of your piecewise functions are going to look broken like this. So you should have dots, you should have open circles, you should have closed circles. All right, so for question number 2, again, you're going to separate them into 2 separate functions. I have it already done for you just for sake of time, but I'll point everything out. All right, so again, here is function number 1. That would be this function. And function number 2. And that one has your open dot. Okay? So again, when you guys are doing this, I want you to write these types of notes on them. Okay? If you have the less than or equal to sign, that's going to be just a regular dot. If you have the greater than or less than sign, you're going to have an open dot. Okay? So what happens is we have our function is true for the pink part, right? F of x is equal to 5. And then when we get to when x is equal to -3, it takes a little jump. So this spot right here is the solution for -3. So at -3, it's 5, okay? But for right here, that would be an open circle, okay? So it technically isn't true for that one, all right? So that point isn't included because if you remember, these are functions. So if these are functions, we can't have 2 points that are over top of each other. Remember, that would fail the vertical line test, all right? So take note for that. And then I also included the slope and y-intercept here just to remind you how to graph lines. But again, remember, you can always put it into your calculator. Okay. So number 3, this one, we have a little bit of experience now with our absolute value, so I put an absolute value question. So again, you separate these 2, and then you look at the domains. All right? So for the first one, that's absolute value. Okay, so I separated that over here. So here's the first one. Okay, that's going to not include, so it's going to be an open circle at this point. All right. And then for the other one, right here, and that's going to be a closed circle at 2. Okay, so remember, if it has an equal to sign, it includes that number. If it doesn't, then it does not include that number. Okay, so remember, you only plot the points less than -2 for g of x. The absolute value of x plus 2. And then for the g of x is equal to 1/2 x, that one we do 2 and greater. And again, I only picked the points that are perfect whole numbers. So the last thing we're going to do is we are going to take these functions and we are going to practice actually writing out a piecewise function. So here we know we have two functions, so I'm going to write f of x is equal to, let me change that to blue so it's not so bright. Okay, so I know that I'm going to have two different functions. Okay. So the first one, I see 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is a vertical line, so this would be 4. Okay. And I see that my x value starts at 0, and it's a closed circle, so it's going to be included. Okay, so when x is greater than or equal to 0, which means everything to this way. All right? So that is this line right here. Now for the other part, we got to do a little bit of searching. Okay? So we're practicing our linear equations. So this is going to be, so it is at 4, so we know it's going to be plus 4. Okay? And then I see that, let's see, it goes down to, okay, so m is equal to -2 over -1, which is equal to 2. Okay, so 2x plus 4 when x is less than or equal to 0. So again, it's a closed circle, so if I'm going less than, it would be going that way. Okay, so that would be your final answer. That's what it looks like. All right, so this one, we are going to have 3 answers rather. We have one right here, one right here, and one right here. Okay, so just to point this out, this is open, and this is open. Okay, so open, closed, open. So this is going to be 3 different answers. Okay, so let's do all the functions and then I'll do the domain after. So the first one, and I'm going to start from left to right. Sorry, I should have did that with the other one. So this one I have 1, 2, 3. So when y is equal to -3, okay, this one right here, so it goes through 0, 0, and I see that it's up 1 and over 1. So this is actually y equals x. And then for the last one, 1, 2, 3, 4. So when y is equal to 4, sorry, there should be a little equal sign here. Okay, so now you're going to want to do your domains. So if we start at the bottom one, now we're doing our x values, right? So when x is 1, 2, so x less than -2, all right? So see, it's -2 and it's going less than, so x is less than 2. Now we have our, this is also closed. So this one we're going to have a little interval. So we're going to say from -2, x, and then less than or equal to +2. And then for our last one, x is greater than 2. So there's our piecewise function. So I know that is not very easy, but please try your best. The graphing ones are what I want you to focus more on. Sorry, I didn't write the word if. If. Okay. All right, so your homework is, and again, classwork if you have time, is going to be numbers 5 through 7. 5 through 7. That's going to be your homework. And then if you look past those, I just want to do a real quick recap. So again, less than or equal to is a closed circle, goes to the left. Less than is an open circle, goes to the left. Greater than or equal to is a closed circle, goes to the right. And greater than is open circle and goes to the right. Okay. Again, these are, if you flip your page, that is on the next page.